Now, we are joined by Irish Rugby International and Tackle Your Feelings Ambassador Deirbhile Nic A Bháird as the new Tackle Your Feelings Schools online teaching app is launched. The new platform is now easier for teachers to deliver the TYF Schools programme to their students and can be found on iOS and Android app stores. Tackle Your Feelings was launched by Rugby Players Ireland and Zurich in 2016 and is funded by the Z Zurich Foundation. Deirbhile, a very good morning to you. How are things?
Morning, how are you?
Very well, thanks. Could you just begin by talking us through how you first got involved in this and why this campaign means so much to you?
I suppose obviously being involved in the rugby setup, I have access to player development officers with RPI and Rugby Players Ireland, and then they're partnered with TYF. And the opportunity to work with them on some projects over the time that I've been injured came up. I got to work at the Young Scientist this year, which was brilliant, really. And then do some work specifically with TYF as well over the last couple of weeks. So I guess the program itself is extremely important to us because we benefit from it as players within the professional programs and non-professional sides as well. But then the flip side of that is, it's part of our job as role models to look after our supporters, look after our fans, set a good example, and Tackle Your Feelings is a great program to give people tools to do exactly that and to help look after themselves as well.
So when you're going through the injury, you're finding a lot of free time that you would like to pursue other projects for the time being, or is this something that kind of came at more of a necessity to you, that you kind of really needed this sort of element in your life to be contributing and to be giving back somewhat?
It's definitely not for an abundance of free time anyway. Rehab is almost harder than normal training, I think, or I'm definitely finding it more busy anyway.
Right.
But I think it was not to minimize it as a distraction, but definitely as something that was outside of my normal job, I guess. And I'd kind of always be looking for ways to collaborate with Rugby Players Ireland on different projects anyway. So when this opportunity came up, and especially the Young Scientists to start it all off, it was just something different. And I guess the responsibility piece, again, it's very important to our team in general, but I love that element of the game as well, that we get to pay back to the community that supports us so much. So it's definitely been a big piece for me and very rewarding.
How is the recovery going, Deirbhile?
Yeah, it's going all right. Look, these things are slow. I think it's just part of the game, really. But I have definitely had to, I suppose, dig deep and learn a lot about myself. But there's a brilliant team of medical and support staff around us now. And I think, unfortunately, there's a good few girls that have had the same experience. So I have them to lean on as well and get into, I suppose, the mental side of coming back from a long-term injury. So I'm at the halfway point now, but hopefully over the worst of it.
So do you get given a timeline when you do the injury in the first place and you're kind of setting yourself towards an end goal, or is that end goal constantly changing?
I think you have a vague idea of an end goal. It's generally a 9 to 12 month injury. I think for contact sports, they definitely tend to lean further down that line. It's obviously just higher risk. So we don't have a definitive end date, but definitely hoping to aim for kind of that September, which would bring me in around 10 and a half months.
Was it was an injury you picked up in training, was it?
Yeah, we had a training game just before the girls headed off for Dubai. So I think it was 5, maybe 6 days before they flew for the tournament. So not ideal, but just, as I said, part of it, unfortunately.
And what actually did you injure?
I tore my ACL. So I had a collision at the back of a line out and knee just folded left to right instead of front to back.
Do you know in the moment that it's something pretty bad? Is it something that kind of shows up in a scan later, or had you a fair idea there and then that this was going to be a long-term one?
I guess I knew it was bad in the sense that I haven't really ever had like a long-term injury, and it was pretty painful. But what made it worse was the pain went away relatively quickly. And unfortunately, that tends to be a sign that everything is gone. So I remember sitting on the stretcher watching the rest of the session from the sideline, and after the session, Avian Riley, who was just coming back from hers or just finished her return to play, came over and asked if I was still in any pain, and I said no, and her face just dropped because I think she had a good idea of what that meant. So I didn't know instantly, but I knew something was very wrong instantly, yeah.
What happens then in the aftermath? Do you get it operated on? Do you just go through the recovery phase, or because I know that there's different ways of dealing with this injury?
Yeah, I think it like that. It depends on the knee. It depends on the injury. So I had a couple other bits that were damaged as well, and the surgeon had a look at it, and wanted to let those, like the MCL, needed to heal by itself pre-op. So I did, I think, 6 weeks of prehab before the surgery, or 5 weeks maybe. And that's just gym work, getting back to being able to walk and move better, get the swelling out of it as best as you can, and then surgery whenever they reckon you're ready for it. But it was kind of mad. Like, I was not able to run or anything like that, but I was more or less fully functional in the gym, at least the day of the surgery. I think I was squatting more or less what I had been squatting pre-injury, and then you go for the surgery and you wake up not being able to bend or straighten your leg at all. So it's definitely been kind of, some points of it are a little bit frightening, I suppose, in terms of losing your ability to move properly. It's a bit alien-like, but it comes back faster than you think it's going to as well.
It's one thing being able to lose your ability to do basic functions when you're an ordinary person, let alone when you're an elite athlete, and it is the thing that in many ways that defines a huge part of your life. To lose that mobility for a certain amount of time, that surely adds to, I guess, the scariness of the whole situation.
Yeah, like I think that was like, you're kind of used to injuries, I suppose, but the level of it, like, I'd never had a surgery before, so even that process alone was a bit like nerve-wracking. But the worst bit for me was I wasn't able to drive for like nearly 8 weeks. And then, like, you know, getting buses and stuff when you're on crutches and not really able to get up and down steps also wasn't ideal. So in fairness, like, the girls were brilliant, running a taxi service for me, especially Enya, who also had done it. So I think had extra empathy. But yeah, like, it is challenging for sure. Even now, like, I'm nearly 5 months down the line, and there's certain movements that it just feels so weak on, and it's really alien, like the feeling of being so nervous of it. Even still, like, I'm still not used to it. So it's definitely it is probably the hardest part, aside from not being able to play.
You've had a really, pardon me, a different and varied career in that you played sevens, you played 15s, you've taken some time away from the sport before. This break now, does it make you even more determined to go back? Or is it giving you an opportunity to have a look around and go, actually, I need to start making plans for life post-rugby as well?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think I came back about a year and a bit before doing it, and had kind of, I suppose, hit my stride again. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was competing, and I had sort of organised my life to allow me to train full time again, which in itself was a kind of scary decision. I left my job and was studying at the time, and put that on hold for a little bit to try and compete for a World Cup position, or to help us qualify for a World Cup. And I think about 2 months or a month after I got the confirmation of my deferral, the knee was gone. So that was a bit stressful. But I think this break, and not having the choice to play, has definitely made it clearer to me that I want to play, like, more than anything. I think at other times it was challenges around, you know, long periods of time of not being selected, or not feeling like I was able to compete. But I suppose your mindset is very different when you're in a spot that you're making teams and feeling like you can actually contribute.
You also changed position repeatedly as your career has gone on. When you say you hit your straps, was that because you found your best position?
I think so. Like I moved from the wing to hooker when I moved to England playing with Quins, and that was just again opportunistic. I wasn't going to make the back three there, so I needed to find a way in, and that just stuck. Maybe a little bit to my detriment because I don't think I was a particularly good hooker. But in my year where I wasn't involved in international, I had stepped away from sevens. I played back row with Old Belvo and with Munster. And the coaches there, I think, more so than just the position, the coaches at the time just gave me such confidence to go and play my game. And being backed that way, I think, gave me just freedom to do what I was good at. And I think it finally clicked, I suppose, as opposed to just being about the position, because I'd be happy enough to slot in anywhere if I'm needed, but I kind of know what my strengths are now and what I can bring to a game, and I guess you just try and focus on those without taking away from the system too much, and it's probably still something I have to work on.
It's a real testament to your coaches at Munster and Old Belvo that they managed to help you find that enjoyment and to essentially take you to a position where you feel like you're comfortable in this role.
Yeah, they were brilliant. Like Tanya and Johnny at the time at Old Belvo, just like they gave me leadership roles as well and responsibility, I suppose. So that made sure that I was taking it extremely seriously, which I generally would anyway, being competitive. And then Briggsy and Hayes and the rest of the coaching staff at Munster, I think they possibly eventually realised that I wasn't very good at listening, and so maybe they should lean into what I was doing naturally as opposed to trying to change it, because I'm not particularly good at that either. So look, the girls as well were a major part of it. I think making me feel welcome and I suppose supporting each other and enjoying the type of rugby we were playing too, like that always has a big impact on things. And I guess getting back to club in itself was a huge part of it for me, just building that community element of the game again.
You mentioned Briggs and Hayes there, two people who off the ball listeners will be very familiar with. How good are they in the coaching game?
Yeah, I think they have superpower in the sense that, you know, they've played the game in a lot of cases over the last couple of years. They've probably played with a number of the people that they've been coaching, so it gives them a lot of insights. And like, you know, if you know Fiona Hayes, she keeps the crack going anyway, that's for sure. So it's about that element of being serious enough that you get the job done, but really being able to enjoy your time on pitch and off pitch as a team as well. And I think that's a big focus for both of them.
How have you found watching this year's Six Nations? Are you a nervous watcher? Are you happy to be sitting there not involved, or is it a fairly agitating experience watching the girls out there at the moment?
I am definitely a nervous watcher. I don't think it's been agitating as such. I suppose I had the experience of watching them in Dubai, watching them online, I suppose, but it's just, it's sad. Like, I think that's the thing that, like, I miss being able to contribute in an on-pitch way. But in fairness to Scott and to Elaine, our manager, and all of the other coaches and the support staff, they've kept me fairly involved. Like, I'm in the same building as the girls every day. I gym with them a lot of the time. I go out and watch pitch sessions. So really the only thing I kind of miss out on is, you know, being physically in it with them, and then match day and the hotel bits. But like, a lot of these girls are my friends for a very, very long time. So even in their downtime, I kind of tag along, I suppose. So it's been tough. But I think the end is in sight now. Like, once this campaign is over, in my head anyway, that's, you know, a big box ticked for me along my journey, because I hopefully won't be missing any more internationals after that. So I think it also helps to see how much progress and positivity. I know there's been some disappointments, obviously, over the last 2 weekends, but I'm watching training. I'm hearing the type of, I suppose, talk and seeing the environment change this year big time. So it doesn't feel like a terrible loss for me personally, anyway, because I know I'm coming back into something that's going in the right direction.
Right, that's interesting, because that's definitely been the sense from the outside looking in, that while there were real frustrations about the result against Italy at the weekend, certainly the defensive showing against France in weekend one and the performance last weekend point to a graph that's pointing upwards.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think, I know people want to see results, and like, look, we do as well. Like, that's obvious, but it's not that simple. You don't change an entire season like we had last year overnight. And France are third best team in the world, like possibly competing for higher, and we put in an incredible shift against them. I think we were up to it physically. Couple of system errors was the difference really in some of those tries. And last year, I don't think you could have even, found a silver lining in some of the performances. So I really think if, an astute kind of rugby analyst is looking at it, they can see the change, they can see the positivity, they can see the development, even in individuals, I think, which again is so refreshing for us. I think Scott, Deck, they're really challenging us to be better individually so that we can be better as a collective. And we're relishing that. Like, you can see it in the girls when they go out training. They are dying to learn, dying to get better. And we have a kind of growth environment now that's going to allow us to do that at a much, much faster rate than I think we even thought we could.
Right. Well, listen, Deirbhile, it's been great chatting to you. Thanks, Minnie, for coming on the show, and very best of luck with the rest of the recovery over the next few months.
Thanks a million. Thanks, guys.